we bring in a friend who we've known for years and years and years. He's an author, relationship therapist, Dr. R.G. Alan Wilson.
Some expert advice on how we can all talk to them. Joining us now is relationship expert Dr. R.G. Alan Wilson. She's the author of Courageous Conversations Connect. Good morning, R.G.
Doctor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Janelle. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And as we mentioned, a lot of people just dealing with anxiety during all of this. What are your suggestions?
Some of the things that we need to remember is that this is temporary. This is temporary inconvenience for long-term gain. And as long as we stay healthy, Janelle, then everything else is recoverable.
Talk to your children about what's happening right now. What are the best ways to do that?
There's some do's and don'ts, right? So you want to tell them that you're going to be here. We're going to be okay. Kids want to know that they're secure and they're safe. So predictability, structure, and consistency. You also want to let them know you have a plan. And even if you don't have a plan, tell them that you're working on one.
And good morning, everyone. This is the Courageous Conversations Connect space where we have our quarantine talks every day, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. And I am yours truly, Dr. R.G. This is Monday, June 8th, 2020. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. So welcome to the show. Thank you. Do me a favor. Make sure that you tag a friend, share this post. This is our community give back. We've been doing this. I think this is our 13th week. We have been, I guess it's the 14th week in quarantine. We started a week after we got into the quarantine, if you will. We're still in it, but we've got so much going on, so much more going on with all of us. So welcome to the show. Larissa's on, Dr. Gail Logan's on, Tom Cook. Thank you for joining. Thank you, IG family, as well as Facebook family and YouTube family. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break from our sponsors, and we're going to be right back. We got a lot to talk about. Stay with us. Well, welcome. This is yours truly, Dr. RG, and this is, again, June 8th, 2020. This is our Courageous Conversations Courageous Conversations Connect space, quarantine talks. Well, boy, do we have a lot to talk about. So let's just get right into it. You know, we do our breathing. So as I'm talking, please put in the chat who you're breathing for when we go into our breathing exercises. Please tell me who you're breathing for. Last week, I was breathing for the family of George Floyd, the family of Breonna Taylor. She would have celebrated her 27th birthday last week, and the family of Ahmaud Arbery, whose lives were taken at the hands of white people, white police officers, and some, I don't know, with the 4 police officers, if they all were white, there was one that may have looked like maybe that person might have been a person of color. But certainly the police officers that killed Breonna Taylor stormed into her home, and then the white males, the 3 white males who are in custody now, who gunned down Ahmaud Arbery. So I'm continuing to breathe for those families because this is not over, and they continue to deal with the trauma of that. Tom Cook, good morning, Tom, said he's breathing for every Black man. Whew, yes, Black men, we need to breathe for them because we know that they've been on assault. They've been under attack for way too long, as many Black people have been as well. And so check in. If you got somebody that you love, your father, your husband, your brother, your cousin, they're Black male, check in with them. Tap in and see how they're doing. Check in with them. Also check in with Black women who are the caregivers and the caretakers and the nurturers. We had a wonderful day engaging with my bonus grandson, well, really my grandson, who doesn't know what's going on in the world just yet, but he will grow into being a Black male and a Black man, if you will. And I'm prayerful that we can tell him about this time and that this time will have passed and that we will have progressed as it relates to the ugly original sin of racism. So tell me who you're breathing for before we go into our breathing exercises, because there are still people that are out there who are dealing with COVID-19 who can't breathe either. We started this because those persons who became infected with this virus of COVID-19, it was affecting their lung capacity and they weren't able to breathe. They would develop into pneumonia and ultimately they would die from not being able to breathe. Although many of them have 80%, they say, are either asymptomatic or they resolve. But for the persons that have a very more severe case of the virus, they end up going into the hospital and they end up not being able to breathe. So we were breathing initially when we started these quarantine talks for all those persons who were impacted and affected by COVID-19 and all those essential workers who are still out there, quite frankly, on the front lines fighting this virus. It's kind of taken a little bit of a side seat due to this pandemic of racism that's happening in our world and all the protests. But we still, need to take them into consideration because those young people that are out there protesting also may be enduring this courageous move and still be impacted by COVID-19, maybe possibly a second wave. Dr. Gail says, I will breathe for all the brave, peaceful protesters and those who are no longer with us because of COVID and first responders. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gail. So let's get into our posture. As you know, we get comfortable, relaxed, put your middle finger on your thumb, or you can put one hand over the other on your lap or to your side. Get into a comfortable position so that you can relax yourself. This is about self-soothing. This is about breathing in not only oxygen, but breathing in serenity and peace and kindness and care and consideration and honoring, breathing in all of the good affirmation that we want to put out there in the universe, and breathing out carbon dioxide as well as pain and worry and fear and anxiety and frustration and anger. We need to breathe that out from our bodies. So at the sound of my voice, when I count to 3, I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your nose, hold it for 8 seconds. We're still holding it for 8 seconds in honor of George Floyd, who had a knee on his neck for more than 8 minutes. And then we're going to breathe out. We're going to do that 5 times. Breathe in at the sound of my voice. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. And breathe out. 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 Make it count one last time, guys. Breathe in. And out. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So I don't know if you remember last week, we last week on Friday talked about emotional healing. That was all last week. We had a conversation on emotional healing talks, and we talked about dealing with two viruses, COVID-19 and racism. And we talked about the pathway to healing and who are the super spreaders out there, if you will. And this week, our topic is going to be pressure points. The collision of two pandemics, COVID-19 and systemic racism. Pressure points, the collision of two pandemics, COVID-19 and systemic racism. So I thought that we would have a courageous conversation about how do we really talk about this? How do we talk about white privilege? How do we talk about Black pain? How do we have that conversation in the same dialogue? And I do mean dialogue, not a monologue. Historically, to be honest with you, there's a book out there by Dr. DeAngelis that is called White Fragility. Dr. DeAngelis, I believe. It's called White Fragility. And it's an interesting phenomenon that happens when white people perceive themselves as being called a racist. And I just went through my mind to think about all the times that I was in the workplace and where I experienced the visceral response of white fragility when any conversation came up about race. It's definitely an interesting phenomenon, because even now, if you are paying attention to the news, if you are on your phone and getting feeds, we can't unsee George Floyd and the knee on his neck for more than 8 minutes, for almost 9 minutes. We can't unsee that. We can't unsee Ahmaud Arbery being hunted down by 3 white men who then subsequently took his life. We can't unhear the fact that white police officers stormed a house that Breonna Taylor was living in and killed her in her own home. So this concept of like living while Black, walking while Black, driving while Black, drinking coffee while Black, golfing while Black, bird watching while Black, sitting while Black, just breathing while Black. George Floyd screamed out as much as he could scream with a knee on his neck, "I can't breathe." It reminded us of Eric Gardner, who said, "I can't breathe." And it's why we talk about the collision between the two pandemics, is because in COVID-19, with this virus attacking people's lungs, they can't breathe. So there is one pandemic happening that's been happening for about 6 months now, maybe before we even knew about it. And then there's another pandemic that's been happening for 401 years, where Black people have not been able to breathe, not be able to breathe financially or breathe physically or breathe relationally or emotionally, just not able to breathe. As Al Sharpton said in the homegoing celebration for George Floyd, the conversation went something like this, that white people have had their knee on Black people's neck for over 400 years and not been able to breathe. We got to have the conversation. We have to stay in a dialogue. We can't get out of the fight now, because we need all hands on deck. We need Black people and white people and yellow people and polka dot people and tall people and short people. We need everybody to be in dialogue so that we can act. Tom Cook says the deflection is real. A retort comes immediately, like all lives matter or blue lives matter versus Black lives matter becomes the resolution. Gotcha. You want me to read that? We must push past our emotional plea and become more adamant about hate crime legislation, which includes police brutality. Right on point, Tom. So think about that, what Tom said, that the retort does come when you say Black Lives Matter. You post it, you guys know it, right? Whether you're white or Black, when the post comes, Black Lives Matter, then often people are saying, well, all lives matter. But here's the deal. If all lives mattered in the hearts and minds and souls and spirits of every human being on the face of this planet, if that were really true, then there would not have to be a hashtag that said Black Lives Matter. There wouldn't, because all lives would really matter. So it's a false choice. It's a fake statement, or what happened like 3 years ago when 45 came in office and they said these were alternative facts or something like that. No, they're facts. This is actually what happens. Larissa says she's breathing for repentance. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Charla said, white people have to be held accountable for their actions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And here in this space, the Courageous Conversations Connect space, please tag a friend, share this post, go on over to YouTube if you have not yet. We've got a lot of good content. Subscribe to our YouTube page, Ask Dr. Argie, AskDrArgie. Hit the notification bell or type subscribe in the message section for Facebook so that you'll get notifications of all of the things that we're out there doing. Share.
The reminder when you get subscribe, that is going to require that they confirm.
Yeah. So then when you get the notification back in Facebook, when you type in subscribe, then you'll get a notification to respond, and you need to reply so that way you'll actually confirm so that you'll actually get the notifications. Excuse me for the mislanguage, if you will. So, the conversation, the courageous conversation has to be ongoing. We cannot stop now. There was movement for sure during civil rights. There was Martin Luther King. There was Malcolm X. There was Rosa Parks. There were movements. There was a movement to push us forward in these yet to be United States of America. However, we've come some ways, but clearly not enough, because there was a big statement about Black Lives Matter many years ago, several years ago, and there was not the same outrage. The outrage is coming from the enrage. If you are enraged based on the inhumanity, the inhumane behavior, the brutality, the viciousness, talk about terrorism. There was a word that was used about protesters saying that they were terrorists. No, the terrorists are the persons that have been terrorizing Black and brown people for hundreds of years. And everyone has had enough. And we need all of us to speak up, to show up, to speak out, to stand up. We need all of us to make this movement happen. Tom says to do the same thing, literally for more than 60 years, expecting a different result is a sign of Black exhaustion leading to our traumatic insanity. We are tired, America. Hashtag we're tired. We tired. We tired, America. We tired. Well, listen, you're right. We are tired, but we can't stop. We can't stop. The reality of it is that our ancestors were tired too when they were brought over here to be enslaved as property of white people. And Harriet Tubman, who was my shero, I imagine she was tired when she stole away to freedom up north and went back 22 times to bring more slaves to freedom. I imagine she was tired. So every time I think I'm tired, I think of her and think, I know she was tired too, but she didn't have time to get caught up in her exhaustion. She had to continue to act. And there were abolitionists during that time, white people that helped her in the Underground Railroad to bring slaves to freedom. That is the type of partnership that we need now. So here's what I want. I'm going to share a little bit about what I think the events have occurred that I think are meaningful over the weekend. And as I share those, I would love to hear your stories of how you felt. This is a safe space to process how you felt when you saw these things happening in the collective, in the culture, in our world. How'd you feel when you saw Black Lives Matter, right, on a street leading to the White House by the mayor, Muriel Bowser, and changing the street name to Black Lives Matter Boulevard? How did you feel? How did you feel when you saw National Guards that came in to patrol the areas? Yes, there were looters, and there were three factions of these protesters. There were looters. There were sometimes these white nationalist groups that were had a completely different agenda, and they were actually putting bricks in front of stores for people, for young Black people to throw the bricks in, to loot, or giving them bats and things like that. And then there were peaceful protesters. Everything would turn dark after dark, if you will. And that was not, I think, not unplanned. So how did you feel? Because this is about us experiencing trauma. How did you feel when you watched George Floyd's homegoing celebration? Because it is a celebration. Black folks know how to celebrate when people go home. We believe they go home to be with the Lord, and so we celebrate their life. And Al Sharpton gave a proud and powerful sermon, if you will, in a celebration of life, but also in a call to action for us to stay connected and stay out there pushing for justice for Black people, and pushing for equality, and pushing for us to tear down the ugly systemic racism that has permeated this culture for far too long. Morgan's coming on, so I assume he has something to say in terms of how he felt, but let me just continue with a little bit of additional things that Morgan, you even brought to my attention, which was that Roger Goodell made a Black Lives Matter statement after years of denouncing and not acknowledging that Black lives do matter. And then what's his name? Colin Kaepernick, right, took a knee and he basically lost his job. But also just this morning, you told me about NASCAR making a statement. So I'm curious about how we're feeling when these kinds of things are happening. And the last thing I wanted to share was that the Mine Nine, they marched in Philadelphia at the African American History Museum, to the African American History Museum. And so people are coming together in different fashions and in different ways.
Well, here's what I wanted to add to that, and sort of like kind of bring a little, I guess, more focus on what it is and what I've been saying for a long time. What you're seeing right now across the news is that you're having more and more corporate entities make statements. The question is, why is that? This country is based on capitalism. When they recognize and see that it's no longer smart for them in terms of their profitability, and it's going to hurt their bottom line, that's when you start seeing the money get behind the movement. And until that happens, there will be no real force behind the movement. So you see Roger Goodell, you're seeing NASCAR, you're seeing all these corporations make these major public statements. It ain't because they got good hearts. It's because they see it's smart for them financially to do so. So just pundits on TV said, now basically we need to maintain and keep our foot on their neck from a financial standpoint to continue making a difference. We can't let up. We have to continue to apply the pressure. If we don't apply the pressure, like anything else, they'll just wait out, our efforts, basically our energy level will eventually dissipate and this will all go away. But what you're seeing sustained protests by, and this is what we got to say, by our white friends, uh, those
Allies.
white allies who are on the battlefield. In many cases, more in these protests, they outnumber us. That's what you have to see. And so I think it was Roland Martin made a statement, I believe, over the weekend. He said, what you have to understand is that the kids that are in their early 20s, when they were 10 years old, they experienced a black president. So they are awakened and experiencing something totally different. So they're saying, wait a minute, in my young years, I experienced a black man being a president. So I don't know this whole race of, so they're not, for this, they're not all for this fever. They are trying to get past this pain, get past this poison, and make a difference. And it's being sustained. That's the key thing. Sustainability is the key. And that's why you're seeing the corporate dollars now coming out. When have you seen NASCAR? NASCAR. I mean, for Black America, it's been like the bastion of racism. I mean, they're Confederate flags flying every time you see a race, So for them corporately to actually stand up and be counted and have a stand where you see every NASCAR person before the race stand up and salute and hold the Black Lives Matter T-shirt up there. Listen, folks, I mean, I'm having serious hope right now. My optimism level has increased and it's at a highest point than it ever has been. I don't know. You can still see or experience letdown, but you never know. So anyway, that was my 2 cents on that.
That's good. Thank you, babe. So what are your thoughts? Share this post, tag a friend, let them know we're in quarantine talks right now. And we're having a Courageous Conversations Connect space. This is a safe space for us to talk about it. Megan says it's because of our buying power. Absolutely correct, Megan. Absolutely correct. So, and Tom says Black folk need to respect their own consumerism and levy the commodity to push legislation. Without legislation to resolve the wealth gap, gentrification, and housing to unemployment, we are back at square one, broke by white supremacist chokehold on our people. Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is so true. So we have more power than we think. Larissa Tate says, I have hope this time. Change is on the way. We must continue to stand up and speak up. Change always brings pain. It will not be easy. Facts. Facts, Larissa. It never is easy. Change is not easy, but necessary. I do also know that if nothing changes, right? It's sort of a play on words, but it's true. Most of us don't like change. But, in order to move the needle forward, that we need to be consistent. There needs to be sustainability. We need to plan and plot and organize and strategize and mobilize, right? We need to educate ourselves with information, arm ourselves with education, understand our historical power, right? We did not get here because we were weak people. Otherwise, we would have perished during the Middle Passage, but we're still here. So we must be here for a purpose, and perhaps for such a time as this.
You mentioned something earlier, sweetheart, about fighting. And one of the things I'm hearing also now with young folks, and one of the ways the far right are fighting is that they're actually, for example, this is impacting their children, the young folks. So what they're trying to do is provide them with statistics bolstering the impact, what they perceive the positive impact is on Black America by way of Trump. So what we have to do is fight them back with statistics as well. So, many kids young folks who are in the suburban areas, and they have more white friends than they do black friends. Like my son, for example, they're being inundated by their white friends. Well, my mom and dad says, Black America unemployment rates are the highest, are the lowest it's ever been under Trump and Barack Obama. The employment, the rates went up and so forth and so on. So we have to do things to combat that. That's what that's how they're fighting. They're fighting the argument by helping or trying to convince their young children, hey, listen, no, what you're saying is hyperbole. That really aren't the facts. So we have to, again, fight with our vote, fight with our dollars, and also present what they say alternative facts. No, how about bringing in our own alternative facts, but what really is the fact, and give them an argument. That's really what's going on. So I wanted to just bring that to the table. And I don't know if people really understand that. And that's something new I heard this weekend, is that a lot of these conservative kids are being fed facts so they can basically counterpoint the argument that we're making. So
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very interesting because you all know that as a therapist, I do this work and, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Friday, often on Saturday, I'm seeing clients. As a matter of fact, Saturday I was working and I really wanted to be downtown at the protest with the Divine Nine. That's where my heart wanted to be there. But I also recognized, just like Cherry Gregg said in the show last week, that there are multiple forms of protest. And sometimes we need bodies, but sometimes we need brains. We need everybody to be in their position, as my pastor said this weekend. And so, depending on where your position is where your power is. And so for me, working and seeing clients that are dealing with, and we're going to talk a little bit later in the week about how to talk to your young people about all that is going on, based on their age range, whether they're very, very young, if they actually can ask the question, then they can experience the answer. And we have to speak not only truth to power, but we need to speak truth and empower our children with that information so that they are aware and equipped to fight, as Morgan said, right? So that as I'm working with kids of all races and all socioeconomic levels, and according, sharing what Morgan said, I share that same sentiment from a therapeutic perspective. What does it feel like to have your kids to tell you that their white friends are basically saying that here's the evidence that Trump is a good person and that he's done all these great things for Black people? It's not true, and they're not facts. And we need to equip our children with the truth and the facts, no matter how painful it is, because right now, white privilege is intersecting with our Black pain, and we need to be able to speak it. So listen, we are going to continue this conversation when we take a minute from our sponsors, and we're going to come right back. I want you to share your story. Think about your story of what you've experienced over the last week or so, and share what you've learned from it, and also where you're still struggling. We want to hear from you. This is the Quarantine Talks, and this is our safe space. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, listen. Hi, this is Dr. RG. Again, welcome to the Courageous Conversations Connect space, where we're having our quarantine talks, right? This is a safe space for us to talk about anything and everything when we're in the midst of a quarantine. This is our 13th week doing this. This is our 47th day doing this, actually our 43rd day. And we are talking about pressure points, the collision of two pandemics, COVID-19 and systemic racism. How do we talk about white privilege and Black pain? We got somebody that has a comment. Hey, Allison, good morning.
Allison says, people are in denial, but there are many who want to help. Yeah.
There are. Denial is not just a river in Egypt, that's for sure. But we also have to engage people in the fight, as Morgan talked about. Yeah.
Mama Mia says, do you give online mental health counseling?
Yes, I do, Mama Mia. And 12 o'clock today, I will be going to my office, and I will be moving into my office upstairs, and I'll be moving into therapy. So thank you for joining. One, because if you are new to this platform, share this, tag a friend, and share that we are on every Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. We do this as our community give back, our way of helping people to create a safe space to process all that they're going through. We started this early on in the quarantine process, and we continue to do it. But once I pivot from here, Mama Mia, then I should go into seeing clients literally all day from 12 noon until probably 9 p.m. We've moved up our entire practice to online for right now until we can get back into the office. And it is going extremely well because there's a lot of people out there that are very stressed and having lots of challenges. Not just my young people. My youngest client is usually 12. Right now, my youngest client is about 15, and my oldest client is 86. So I see individuals, I see couples, I see families. I also do corporate coaching, and I do seminars and workshops, and we're going to be doing some master classes as well. So please join me or let other people know. They can reach me at 215-789-6999 or at drrg@connectionsmatterllc.com. And Mama Mia, if you don't know, there's a book that we have out called Courageous Conversations Connect. It's a perfect opportunity right now to dig into this. Okay, sorry, Mama Mia. Sometimes when I do that, I apologize because I'm looking at two screens. So I feel like when I'm looking up here, then I'm not looking down here. So I do apologize for that. But Courageous Conversations Connect is the book, and it's called A Pathway to Reset Your Mindset with Intentional Thoughts from the Inside Out. And this is what we need to be talking about. I'm actually going to be working on an addition to this related to what we're going through right now, because the truth is, we can change our mindset. Our mind is different than our brain, right? And we have the ability, if we had the ability to find ourselves in positions that we're in, whether it be with racism or systemic social inequities, we can change that mindset with intentional thoughts from the inside out. So this is a very good book to read, and you can get it at drrgconnects.com. Debbie says, "Hey, Debbie, enjoying your show with meaningful content." Thank you so much, Debbie.
She's still in Boca.
Are you still in Florida, Debbie? You still in Boca, or did you come back? Gina and Velv just got back, so we're happy that they were back in Philadelphia. So listen, I wanted us to keep this conversation going, and please share your stories about what happened for you over the last couple of weeks as you shifted from dealing with COVID-19 and the elevated death rates to the trauma of bearing witness to these atrocities with these actual assassinations, which is what I call them, on TV. And then the outpouring of people who were enraged that then moved to outrage. Tom says, must keep the faith, but also move forward, move the mountain. We, with economic boycotts and political fervor towards the positive threat to walk towards independent party by 2024. Thank you, Tom, for that. When we think about even our economic power, we don't always realize the power that we actually have, right? The power to move mountains, the power to change a generation, the power to shift, like a paradigm shift, the ugly stain of racism. We have that power. I don't know if you all ever heard this term, implicit bias, but that's in some ways what actually has happened over hundreds of years. So those three men who gunned down Ahmaud Arbery, that police officer who kept his knee on the neck of George Floyd, those men who stormed Breonna Taylor's house, Amy Cooper, who, when a man simply said, could you put your leash on the dog in this park, because those were the rules, she then contacted the cops and said that she was being attacked by an African American man. And she was used it to weaponize him. So to weaponize him that he was attacking her. All of this is implicit bias. So I want you all to think about this. Think about these messages because they are very insidious and they are very subliminal, but they weave into our psyche in a way that has long-lasting ramifications for both white privilege and our Black pain at the hands of systemic racism over the years. I just want you to, I see the comment, I just want you to think about this before I read the comment around the implicit bias. Think about this. The White House. The White House. Why is it called the White House? Is it just because the house is white? Or is it because for 44 years, there was a white man in the White House? Or for 43 years? Think about this. Angel food cake. It's white, right? Why is angel food cake white? But then there's little devils. Why is there this concept of the great white hope? But when you look at emojis, when the emojis first began, the emojis were all white. There had to be a protest to get Black emojis. And still, if you pick my intern, Tiffany Ballou, made me aware of this a couple years ago, that the family, when you look at it, it's hard to find a Black family emoji. But but in the very beginning, you couldn't even change it to Black. Now there's all these little apps. But if you get a phone and the regular emojis that are embedded in the phone before you actually change them, they're all white. Why is that? Why do we say Black sheep? Why is the sheep Black sheep? And the implicit meaning of a Black sheep is the person who doesn't follow the rules. They don't do what they're supposed to do, right? Why do they say if you're white, you're right? If you're brown, you can stick around, but if you're Black, get back. All of those are implicit messages around the systematic and systemic racial ideologies that are embedded in racism. And we hear them every single day, and they get embedded into our psyche that hence creates externalized racism, but also internalized racism for many Black people who are not able to see how they injure themselves. Go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, how about this? Just added piece. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. There's a George Floyd on my neck challenge that was introduced on TikTok. There's actually a challenge, and so you're supposed to have again. No Black person, I would think, no sane Black person would even do this, but it's white people going around taking memes of each other, and one person's putting their knee on the neck, and they laughing and making.
And they're saying, "I can't breathe.
I can't breathe." It's an actual challenge. So the insensitivity around it is ridiculous, and
that's beyond insensitivity.
You can't legislate a person's heart, but what you can do systemically is to change the way this country functions from a system standpoint, that the tide of reality in terms of what they can do from a legal standpoint just can't have a place in the world, and we've done many changes systemically. You can no longer smoke in a building. I mean, you
have to wear a seatbelt.
Right.
You didn't have to wear a seatbelt, right?
Remember, let's think about it this way. When I learned how to ride a bike, there was no helmet, no knee pad, no old elbow pads. You got on a bike, and one of the incentives was if your behind fell, you're hurting, it'd be painful. So you get hurry up and figure out how not to fall. But there's so many things we can put in place to kind of counteract that. And that's what I mean by systems needs to be changed. Because it's just is what it is. And in this country needs to understand that more and more voices are being heard now, understanding that systemic change has to take place. And again, another point, when they realized economically it was hurting them for making all these jails, and it was impacting the economics of this country, guess what? Now you have a major movement with major dollars moving away from building more jails and understand, hey, it's costing us more to keep these folks in jail. Let's release those who are not, criminals that are killing people and raping people, lesser crimes need to not be in jail. You're not jail. So,
Right.
It is what it is. Let's get back to the comment that Cynthia had, which I think was pretty powerful.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah.
So Cynthia says, so the morning after all of the riots, I found myself at Lowe's in Warrenton, PA, shopping for vegetable plants. I had a mask on as well as everyone else, and I could see the angry looks at me from whites just staring at me and angry at me. I could see the prejudice in their eyes because of all the looting and everything that had occurred the night before. For the first time in my life, I felt racism, and I don't think I should have felt guilty inside, like I wanted to say something to them. Those were, I think. Okay. So, wow, Cynthia, and it's interesting to me that that you're saying for the first time in your life that you felt racism. And it's also interesting that you talk about that you could, with mask on, you could see the feeling that these people had in their eyes, because I do believe that sometimes the eyes are the window to the soul, and so that the hatred. As I said, we're fighting two viruses, COVID-19 and systemic racism, and racism is bred out of hate, right? But love also trumps hate, and love is infectious, just like hate is infectious and insidious. And we do have to change this culture of hate based on difference, based on skin color. Literally, I mean, it was written that Black people were like, a third of a human being or something like that. Really? We're human. And in terms of rioting, MLK said that riots are the voices of the unheard. And, when you carry a level of rage, as we ought to have, quite frankly, with atrocities, that's what James Baldwin said too, that if to be a Negro in America and to be relatively conscious means to be almost always in a state of rage. So that rage has to go somewhere because pressure bursts pipes, and now the pipes are bursting. Michelle, my cousin says, as proud as I am of how our country has unified on the need for change, the scene of the crowd surrounding Minneapolis mayor demanding for defunding of the police with the white woman on the microphone cursing at him made me feel that there was no real strategy or plan, just emotion. I hear that, Shelley. One of the things I guess I would say is that I think that anytime that I've ever seen progress move forward, it was initially out of some level of emotion that had to come out, right? Because I do believe pressure bursts pipes, and I believe that every pressure point needs a release valve. And so there are things, of course, that we've all seen over the course of the last 2 weeks, some things that we didn't like. And I was actually talking to a client of mine who is a police officer who was saying that and I grew up with law enforcement with my father. It's not always as it appears. And so sometimes that imagery can leave us feeling very awkward, uncomfortable. I get you, this black white woman screaming to defund the police didn't feel good. And yet I think that emotion, once the emotion comes out and we continually move forward, perhaps we will see effective strategy. Perhaps we will see effective shifts in policy changes and in the ways in which practices that we practice create better practices, if you will. Because we also have to have seats at the table. Just as outraged as I was at seeing some of the imagery, and by the way, for your mental health, you have to kind of manage it. But two videos that I saw, one was a white woman with a dog, not Amy Cooper, who was outraged because an interracial couple was doing a photo shoot in the park, and she was just absolutely outrageous with her commentary and her belief system that there was something wrong with them. And then there was another imagery of, I believe it was a white man who was in, they called it Whitefish, Minnesota, I believe. Yeah, Whitefish. Did I put it on here?
No, I don't know if you put it on where. Okay, you know.
Yeah, I think it was Whitefish, Minnesota. And this man was outraged and staring in the face of this Black woman and a whole bunch of other people. And he just was, unhinged, just angry. And so, it helps to crystallize that we need to stay in the fight. And that my hope, Shelley, is that there will be strategy, that there will be change in policy, that there will be practices within the police force. I don't know what defunding the police means. I do know that it may mean a reorganizing.
Well, let me just share with you. That's one of the things that came up this morning. I was watching CNN. I believe one of the former police chiefs here in Philadelphia, he was former police chief. I believe was Braden. I'm not sure of his name. Kelly. I'm not sure of his name. Bottom line, what he was trying to explain, what defunding means. That title seems very, very, like defund means stop all policing. It doesn't really mean that. It just means reallocating some of the assets. And that's what it really means. So you're not going to not ever have cops on the street. That is not really remotely possible. Anybody who also has the same balanced mindset understands you can't ever abolish police. You need some type of police force out there, but reallocating some of the assets, yes, for things like mental health, for things like more community activism and things of that nature, and educating people and so forth and so on. Do policing different, like Archie said a minute ago, there needs to be a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is shifting in this world, this planet. It's a global planet. Things aren't so just in a vacuum, things are more exposed and people have more access to information. There's something called Google, okay? You don't have to go buy an Encyclopedia Britannica and have it ordered and sitting in a book. You can just buy your device, this phone we carry around every day is just an excellent resource and people have access. And so basically, genie's out of the bottle. There's no excuse for you not to know. Which is something what I said. I'm doing this thing on Friday. We'll see how that continues to go, about my 2 cents. And one of the things I was talking about was, what's coming up is, hey, it's not our burden to bear for white folks' information, white folks to be educated and informed about Black history. Like I said, got Google. Anybody can Google anything they want. If they really want to do research and do a deep dive, I don't have to be the one to do that. But what I also know is I need to give them the space to say how they really feel. Because that gives me now the opportunity to again retort back to them, hey, maybe you need to think about it a little bit differently. There were a couple instances this weekend. I think what's the young lady that has the show? Ellen DeGeneres. And she was talking to her DJ. And one of the things she was talking to the DJ about was, she said something and, Twitter went ablaze and everybody pounced on her. But what he wanted to share with her is, listen, I don't want that to quell your thought or to stop you from talking and sharing. Because what that does is open up the lane for me to then explain to you, hey, listen, hey, Ellen, I know you think, that what that statement was kind of benign, but really it was offensive. And here's how it was offensive so that you can know. But I don't want to have to always be your Google, what do you think about this?
Or that you speak for all Black people.
No, right, because you can't. I mean, we're not a monolith, we're all individuals. We have our individual voices and thoughts. A la Candace Owens, who I really need to name her name. Good Lord. Okay. And she is like, oh man, okay. But again, like the article in the New York Times, and they were major arguments speaking about, well, should they have printed it? Should they not have printed it? Well, remember now, free speech. We can't stop somebody from expressing and saying what they feel. We just have to have a retort. we have to have a response back to it, and back to with statistics and so forth, And
Do our
again,
homework.
exactly. That's really what it's about.
Understand our history.
Exactly. And have a response back that can argue the counterpoint. I wanted to do something because Tom had a good point, and I wanted to. It was pretty poignant about, and it's almost like going back to what Shelley was talking about. Here it is, right here, where he says James Baldwin had a good point. He said James Baldwin said in the 60s, James Baldwin wrote. This is what he wrote.
He wrote that to be relatively conscious.
No, he said to be a Negro in America.
To be a Negro in America, I had said that. And to be relatively conscious means to be in a constant state of rage almost all the time. Morgan and I were listening to James Baldwin. In fact, we need to post that this weekend. And there was one particular speech that he gave. And at the very end of the speech, he said, Trump wins. Then he said, be patient and shuffle the deck. He said, Trump wins.
And that was in 19 what? Was it?
I don't remember.
78 or 70 or something. It was over 30 some odd years ago.
I'm not even saying it exactly as he said. Right. I'm not. He was basically saying, yeah. And it was pretty powerful. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a prophecy. He said, he was a powerful, powerful speaker of justice and a truth talker, truth speaker, right? Truth teller, if you will. How many of us? And I think we all have to be honest, right? Truth, trust, and transparency leads to transformational breakthroughs. White people have to be honest about the ways in which they have been complicit in institutionalized and systemic racism and social inequities and injustices. And we as Black people, we have to be kinder to ourselves, because I do believe that we have moved to oftentimes a place of internalized racism. And as Morgan said, the younger generation, although he told me I was a millennial this weekend, and I was like, I am not a millennial.
In 64, millennial starting in 65. So she is technically a millennial.
Not that I don't love millennials in some way, because they have a fight in them that is different than our fight. Now, some ways, maybe it is because we didn't teach them.
Nicole, did you realize your aunt actually technically is a millennial? Did you realize that?
Nicole, I'm not a we listen, and Nicole says we have to be careful not to disrespect our own people. I do think that because we walk around with so much pain and so much trauma, I do believe we have to, as Black people, remember our historical roots, right? That we were a powerful people before we got here, and everything was stripped. And that was not thousands of years ago. That was only 401 years. 1619 was not that long ago. So we're still carrying the injury and the internal injury and the pain of that. And we need to figure out how to be kinder to each other. Cut ourselves. Remember, we talked about this earlier on in COVID-19, cut ourselves some slack, right? S stands for how are you showing up? L stands for leadership in your own little family system, your micro system, and your macro system. How are you showing up? And then A stands for acknowledge. How are you acknowledging the trauma, the pain, the injury, the cost, what it cost you, the courage that you had to have in your workplaces? We're going to talk about that too, because workplaces are being turned upside down because Black folks have had enough and they're no longer silencing their voice. So acknowledge what it is that we've been through, and then commit. C stands for commit. What are you committed to? What is your position? Where are you going to sink your teeth into this fight that we're in, and not get distracted by weapons of mass distraction? I'll be honest. I feel like I've seen too many Twitter wars and Facebook arguments back and forth, and I'm like, how are you utilizing your time and energy? We have a finite amount of time and energy that we need to use and execute in order for good. So ask yourself, is that Facebook argument, is it really worth it? Or are you committing to something greater for the common goal, if you will? So that's the committing. And then K stands for kind. It's a simple word. It really is a simple word. And I know that we're filled with rage and anxiety and fear and worry and pain and, frustration, all of it. I know we're filled with all of that. And in addition to that, we're a kind people. Somewhere along the line, it feels like we sort of lost our way based on, as a woman said a week ago, she said, we were taught violence. We didn't come here this way. We were taught this. We were taught many of the things that we execute on now. And we got to get back to our humanity and be kind to one another and open up the space so that we can heal, which is what this is all about. And I'm sorry, Morgan. White people must honestly examine their hearts to identify racism in their hearts. Black friends do not excuse racism. Does not having Black friends does not excuse racism. Yeah, that's facts. Those are the honest truth. Like, just because you have Black friends doesn't mean that you're not a racist, right? And quite frankly, if you use that as an example, that I have a couple of Black friends, therefore that doesn't quite cut it, right? Do the work. Everybody, we all have to do our work towards healing. Dr. Martha Watson has a book called Facing the Black Shadow. It's for us about internalized racism. And yet then she's also coming out with a book called Facing the White Shadow that's going to be powerful as well. And so we all got to do our work if we're going to move this thing forward, if we're going to get to a better more humane place. So I think about, let me leave you with guys, this. I think about the astronauts that are up in outer space and they're looking down on us and they see everyone all over the world. They have now the ability from where they are to see all of us. And I look at that from the perspective of, what if we saw the humanity in all of us and that we did not have this socially constructed ideology called racism that is based in nothing, no science, no biology. It's based in a mindset of man that has put it upon us in order to elevate white people that have done this in order to elevate them and press down and oppress Black people. So what if we could imagine a world where we were kind, where we were humane, where we offered grace and we stood together for common good as humankind? What if that were the case? We got a long way to go. We got to keep the conversations going, but that can be our reality. As Morgan said, he has hope now, because perhaps now more than ever before, even during the civil rights, there was not this global coming together because people have had enough. So in order to take care of yourselves, guys, I want you to remember that Black lives do matter, and it doesn't mean that all lives don't. We have to empower ourselves, and we have to embark on self-care, prayer, mindfulness, meditation, journal, so you can externalize and recognize that your feelings are valid. Limit your social media if you can. And we need allies in this fight. We need everybody, all hands on deck. Well, Brent said something. So did you want, so the last comments, Brent hopped on. He says, I see him right here. Yeah, he has a long comment. Right under Dr. Gale. Yeah. So Brent says, understanding our history, although difficult, is key. We have to be diligent in finding truth that has been stolen from us.
Absolutely. There should be no expectation of the oppressor educating honestly the oppressed. How about that? Racism becomes powerful inside the systems and institutions that affect our everyday lives. Historically, racism has been a tool of division for greed. When we can see it for what it is, the power fades away. That's true. Facts. Facts. When we see it for what it is, the power fades away. We have the power. We've always had the power. We just need to recognize it and use it. Hey, Sora. Hey, Sora. Thanks for. Oh, am I saying that right, Sienta? Tell me if I'm saying that right. But thanks. She says, thanks, Sora RG. Thanks, Sora RG, for these quarantine talks. Sending Bison love. Oh, HU. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you.
She asked, I guess she asked a question.
Oh, she asked about you.
I'm not. It's not a.
Fridays. You come on Fridays.
It's just something I started doing a few weeks ago, and some people started liking it. So I'm just every Friday coming on in the mornings to do somewhat of a wrap up, a weekend wrap up about current events, and just giving my 2 cents. That's what I'm calling it, my 2 cents. That's all. So I'm coming on every Friday morning, somewhere between 8 and 10 o'clock.
Him and the birds out there with birds.
The birds. Weather permitting. Weather permitting. If not, I'll do it inside.
It's powerful, babe. Keep doing it. It's powerful. We need to hear your voice. We need to hear the voices of other Black men that are out there and enduring this, because your pain is different, your experience is different, and your voice matters. So keep doing it. Thank you.
Will do. You guys take care. Have a great day.
All right. Listen, guys, we love you. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hopefully we have some special guests for you, and we just know that this is not the end. This is just the beginning, and we are not going to stop until there's justice for all. And so, yes, Black Lives Matter. Have a beautiful day on purpose, from our heart to yours.